Isn't all of life a podcast? Aren't we always rolling? I've been listening to an album by Hosier, which was released last year in 2019. Again, oddly prophetic. Wasteland Baby.
Yeah.
And he's oddly excited about going into the wasteland. Or that's how I interpreted the title. But I feel like none of us are really surprised with album titles and movie themes all predicting apocalypse adjacent scenarios for long enough. Like none of us are really it's bad that it's happening, and maybe it's happening a little earlier than we expected. Like when you're sitting in the classroom waiting for the teacher to come in and she arrives 10 minutes before class is supposed to start, so you're surprised but not that much, because your teacher was gonna come in anyway.
It was bound to happen.
Yeah, I mean, your heart still fills with terror because you haven't done the homework and you're not prepared.
Yeah.
But you're not surprised.
Which sort of informs our podcast this week, because we have not done our homework entirely, and we're going to push it forward since it's self-assigned homework. So we're going to move that forward for the next week, hopefully. And we can talk about what we're excited about right now.
Okay, let me think about that for a little bit, because I really wonder if I'm excited about anything right now.
Okay, I'm excited. I'm super excited. I watched Hamilton again just a few minutes ago, just like a few minutes before we started recording, and I'm super excited like every time. I have my notes and I have my full script of Hamilton right next to me. I can show it to you over here.
Yeah.
Like the full script. And I have my 2 pages of notes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm all ready for this.
All right. I am completely unprepared, but let's do it anyway.
That's absolutely fine.
I feel like we have heard Hamilton enough, and now I've seen it twice by now.
Yeah.
So I think I should be able to remember a lot of things, and I hopefully I will be, as my memory gets jogged as we discuss, hopefully I'll be able to come up with things.
Yeah. And as much as you don't like me breaking the illusion of the audience listener paradigm, but we have recorded this podcast before. We have talked about Hamilton in great detail, but because of technical issues, we have had to scrap that for now. And I don't know whatever you say, this is still going in the podcast this time.
You're not supposed to tell them that.
I was wondering, just indulging our apocalyptic brains a little bit more. I was thinking about this a while back. You know how I told you a few days ago when we were talking of how I was, when the lockdowns began, I was playing a video game because I had some free time. And the video game I chose to play was a game called Dying Light. And it was this incredibly realistic zombie apocalypse game where you're basically running not like other zombie games where you have a machete and a chainsaw and you can just do whatever you want, but in this one you were literally scared because you had nothing. It was very realistic. You just had to keep running away from them as much as you can, and especially with the story elements of it and all of that stuff, it got so real because it felt really scary with all the the CDC stuff that was going on in there, and they were like, oh, we need to find a cure, and there's other happening, and there's gang wars and stuff, and I was like, no, this is way too real for what is happening right now. It's a great game, but probably not the best time to play it right now. So but I was thinking about just zombie media in general, games and films and television shows and books and stuff like that, and this is sort of based on current experiences, I guess, for everyone, but I think it indulges when you're watching something like The Walking Dead or something. It sort of indulges this part of your brain which is very sort of which is the brain of a survivalist, where you are constantly thinking of, oh, if this happens tomorrow, what am I gonna do? Like for now, like as we speak, it's midnight, so like the lockdown has started again in my city for a few days. So like the last 2-3 days I've been spending thinking, okay, this is the stuff that I need to get done, and this is the stuff that I need to buy, this is the stuff that I need to get prepared, this is the amount of water I need to store, and things like that. And it sort of satisfies your brain in the same kind of scenario where when you're watching The Walking Dead, for example, you're imagining of all of these scenarios where if all of the, again, coming back to what we were saying before we started rolling, where you have order and you are sort of imagining if order does break down, what would you do in that kind of a scenario? And I think that like zombie, the genre of films and television and everything, just sort of satisfies that part of your brain. It scratches that itch of, you know, oh, this is the kind of stuff that could happen, and this is how I would do, or how I would deal with it. And it's happening to a very mild, unexciting, extremely dreary and dull way for everyone, where it's like a slow moving apocalypse where, you know, there's no and I'm glad that it isn't more adventurous than it is right now, but essentially it feels like that kind of a scenario where, you know, everything's just happening at a slow pace, but it's still sort of giving you a sense of how things could go wrong or right, or these are the issues that we would have. So if there were a bigger problem in the future, but if it does happen, we sort of know what are the pitfalls, and we can sort of hopefully deal with it better.
Yeah. I mean, in one sense, like, I guess a lot of people have commented on this, is that as far as viruses go, like, this could be more deadly, right? So that's a good thing in a weird way. But I like the way you described it. Like, it scratches an itch in your brain. It's like a survivalist itch, I guess. I don't really know why everyone has it, or I don't even know if everyone has it, first of all. It might seem so from the fact, like, these games are really popular. And although I have never been a fan of these video games so much, I feel like I have that itch as well. It just manifests a little differently in my brain, where for me, I think about, like, rather than zombie survival games, I have tried playing games which are just like, you know, you're lost in the forest, and they're kind of more puzzle oriented, or they're more like creativity sided games where you have to be creative and use the stuff around you. But I think the best way that I prefer to think about it is it comes out really strongly when I'm packing, when I'm traveling, because when I think of traveling, like, this is sort of where my brain goes, that I can only take 1 or 2 bags. I don't have a lot of ability to carry things, but I still need to ensure that I have enough stuff with me, that, you know, I don't get sick, or if I do get sick, I am well prepared in all of different scenarios. And I guess that's part of the reason that I like to travel, because you every time you travel, you have to think about it. Otherwise, in your house, generally you have everything. You have medicine, you have food, you have, you know, you don't have to worry about the next 24 hours, whether maybe you find something to eat or not. I mean, I think like, this survivalist itch is quite strong. I am curious whether everyone has it, and maybe if someone's listening to this podcast, you could let us know in the comments if you're listening on YouTube, or just somehow get a message to us.
Send us a pigeon.
Yeah, by carrier pigeon.
Yeah.
Perfect. But on a slightly different note, I mean, I know that electronic messages are virus proof, which is a good thing. But how good of an idea do you think it would be to actually use carrier pigeons at this moment? I mean, the time factor is horrible.
Yeah.
Perhaps you might transfer some other viruses, but maybe not corona. Also, I must say I have to go on record and say I detest pigeons in general as an animal.
I don't find them that irritating.
I find them extremely irritating. I find them annoying beyond extent, beyond all sort of rational thought, and I think that they are horrible, horrible, horrible flying rats.
Okay.
Anyway, moving on.
You know what has happened? You've sucked me into this this detour of conversation when I had actually created a perfect segue into our main topic for today, and I do not appreciate that happening.
That's what I'm here for. You're the one who's supposed to keep us on track, and my purpose is to deviate you. So between the two of us, we managed to find something that goes somewhat organizedly, but it's still a little off.
So basically, if we ever go out hiking again, it would be I'm trying to pull you onto a trail and you're like, no, I'm gonna go and look at that little pigeon and tell it, give it my peace of mind, and you're just gonna run at it, and I'm gonna be pulling you back onto the trail. And then what ends up happening is that you don't get to talk to your pigeon as much, and we still get lost in the woods. But it's fine because we've learned how to be survivalists.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And even if we do get lost in the woods, we will survive. I think an analogy for this, maybe a slightly better one, would be that, you're trying to prepare some dish. You're making something and you're following the recipe. Mm-hmm. You're adding exactly the precise amounts, measuring the weight and volumes and everything. And I just walk by and drop some stuff in the pot that I have no idea what it's gonna do.
Yeah, something random like your phone. You just drop your phone in my pot.
No! Not that random. It's still food. It's still gonna be tasty, but in a different way than you previously expected it to.
Anyway, you've done it again, because I was gonna use that trail and track analogy. I was gonna use that track analogy to come back to the fact that we are talking about music.
I feel like this whole episode is gonna be a conversational tug of war.
Yeah, just us meandering about.
That's my favorite way of going anywhere. But coming to our main topic for today.
Yes.
Which is Hamilton, because it's finally out on Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. It's there, except in Sweden, which I found out yesterday, that Disney Plus is not available in Sweden until middle of September. And I don't know, maybe this episode will go up in the middle of September. So maybe it doesn't make sense to say it's not out. But as of recording, it is not out in Sweden. So I had to use a VPN to watch it. But it's out on Disney Plus, and both of us are very happy.
Yes.
So let's talk Hamilton, because I think, for just a little bit of background, you introduced me to this play this musical, back in, I don't know, 2-3 years ago. I forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you just mentioned hey, check it out. There's something about a guy named Alexander Hamilton. And then I heard the first song, which was really catchy, and I liked it, but I didn't like the rest of the songs. Until a few months later, I heard it again and I liked it a lot. And both of us are really crazy about this musical, to the point that you have a book of printed out lyrics next to you and 2 pages of notes.
Yeah.
So let's go.
So I'm just going to go, again, a little bit of background on my end. A long time ago, and this is like a really long time ago, this was in 2009, when on some forum or somewhere on the internet, I found a link to a video of this guy singing, like a poet, and he was rapping in the White House for some event that they were doing. 2009, okay, this video is from. And I'd watched it like just at the time of when it really got popular. This video went viral, and I mean viral not in the sense that it has become today, viral as in the term viral for 2009 was basically anything with over 10,000 views, and this had like 100,000 or something or thereabouts. And when I saw it, it was really interesting, and I don't know why, but it really just caught me, because maybe it was my entire phase where I was just super into rap and I was super into Eminem, and I was just completely obsessed with hip hop, just at least in terms of music.
Wait, but this is back in school, right?
Yeah. This is very, very early. This is like just the time where I was just getting into Eminem, and like again 2009, I was like 13 years old or something, 13 or 14 maybe, and I just saw this one video and I was like, yeah, this is very cool. This is like a story of this cool guy, and that was actually posted on Lin-Manuel Miranda, who was the singer. This was posted on his YouTube account, and it was just like, if you go back to that video right now, which I did today but just to sort of get some research done, I went to his website, and it's under the name of Usnavi or Usnavi, which was the name of his character from his previous play, In the Heights, his musical. And so it's just the title is very generic. It says the Hamilton mixtape ... the White House premiere, and it's just him there, and he introduces it as a concept album. And so again, the entire idea has changed since then. It went from being a concept hip hop album to being this cultural phenomenon of a musical on Broadway. And so it was this entire thing, and there were moments where I saw laughter. Like I remember when the way the lyrics goes, there's an introduction of the main character from a different character's perspective, and when the main guy comes in, and when the line goes, what's your name, man? Alexander Hamilton. And at that point there was a huge uproar of laughter. There was just, everyone was just laughing, because again, the idea was so novel back then, of the story of a founding father of America from the 18th century being told in the form of rap, of hip hop, was so new and so weird and quirky that it was just that was the logical response. And I'm pretty sure I laughed back then, and it was interesting, but it just sort of caught me, and it was there in the back of my mind. And then a few years later, and I mean like around 2013 14ish, I think, so this is around the time that we went out of our high school and things like that, and when I saw another video again in the White House, and this time it was a bigger group, and they were all performing a song from Hamilton. And at this point it had become a play, it had gone on to Broadway, and I had sort of just blocked it out in my head. Like I remembered the music, I remembered the lyrics, I remembered the concept, but I did not remember that there was going to be a concept album. So I never really sort of waited out with my bated breath to like hear that album. But I saw that video, and it was again in the White House. It was in front of Barack Obama, but this was like near the end of his second term, or like somewhere in his second term. And this time the response was just applause. Like when he says Alexander Hamilton, there was just applause, because at this point it had sort of been normalized to a certain extent, and people had seen the real potential of something, where it was not just like a parody video, it was not just some SNL sketch, it was something much bigger. And that's when I sort of took notice again, and I seeked it out, and I found the entire album. So it did come out as an album, but essentially it was a play, it was a musical on Broadway, and they did a full recording session of the entire thing, so you can listen to it, which is incredible, because not everyone can go to New York and to Broadway and watch it happen, but now you can.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think I honestly, I've enjoyed the experience of having not seen it for some time and just listening to the music for a really, really long time, because it's helped me sort of find such small nuances within the music, because there's so much there. And then now that I feel like even after so many listens over so long, I would have to say at least 2 years, I still keep finding funny new things, like observations about the lyrics, about the characters singing those words and stuff like that. That I have really enjoyed that entire process of listening to it. And now that it's visually available, I am now enjoying the process of discovering stuff in the visual side of the musical, because obviously a musical is an audio visual experience where the visual component is, I would say, more prominent and more important to a certain extent. And it's been nice to sort of have that to have those two sides of the coin, where I can now, I'm really comfortable with the lyrics and the sort of puns, and I know the jokes within them.
Yeah.
Where now I can pay attention to the characters, and I'm able to sort of enjoy it more, because I know what's happening, but at the same time I can observe people in the background, people's expressions, which obviously I never heard, or I never knew about.
Yeah.
So I'm really enjoying this. And I'm not sure, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is the first time such a thing has been done, right? Because previously movies were made of musicals, but they were adaptations. And in this case, they have just filmed the musical on stage as it is performed.
This is quite common, actually. It's been done quite a bit. Like I think on
Oh, okay.
on Hotstar, which is the Indian version of Disney Plus, there are a few more teleplays that I have watched myself, and like some Indian plays, and even like the big ones like Phantom of the Opera, and those ones are like recorded, and there's a lot of Shakespeare which has been recorded from the West End and things like that. So it's a fairly regular thing to do. But what I found really fascinating with the format of this filming was the fact that it wasn't just the way other things would have, is you just had a single static camera most of the time, and you might have like another camera just for like a mid shot, just like to see at least who the faces are. But in this one, you have the way they recorded it was they recorded it over 3 days. They had 2 live performances where with an actual audience, and they had 1 day of shoot without the audience, where it was like a day off, but they actually got a camera and went up close and got like these close-up shots. And because these guys are so well rehearsed, they like everything just flows perfectly from one shot from one day to the other, and it's incredible. And before we get into the content of it, I just want to address the platform or the format of the musical, because I think it's the one thing that really sets it apart and which really brings it out to such a big audience. Because like the way, so there's this thing in art where you have low art and high art, where something like something like your Dali and Picasso and Monet and these kinds of things are high art. Shakespeare is high art, at least in today's day. Again, Shakespeare is a different topic we can get into some other time. But all the theater in itself, though it might have started out as a form of low art, it has become a high art kind of thing, something that's prestigious. Broadway and West End have this sort of air of opulence and sort of richness and wealth, and it's not the kind of place like a movie theater is somewhere anyone can go and watch a film, or you can go and you can listen to music. So most of music is sort of low art, but you have theater, which is still, especially Broadway, which is like the most prestigious of all theater for the Western world. And you have hip hop, which was a street art from like the lowest of arts. I mean just in technical terms. I don't mean it's not like a qualification of merit. It's just a classification.
Yeah.
Because honestly, like hip hop is incredible, and that sort of proves this thing. But with Hamilton, what has been managed is sort of a blending of the low art and the high art to get something that caters to everyone. While when I first had the concept that it was turned into a musical, it was like it's gonna alienate the hip hop audience, because they're gonna be like, oh, they've turned this into a highbrow thing, and it's gonna alienate the people who go to theater and be like, oh, why have you brought hip hop here? Because it doesn't belong here, because it's supposed to be on the streets. But it ended up somehow uniting everyone on the same front, where everyone just appreciated every part of it so much that it, like, after and like this happens when anyone listens to it for the first song, maybe, or maybe the first few verses. It's a little weird. There's a little bit of a disconcerting feeling, but after that, once it's gone, you just completely just surrender yourself to the music and the lyrics and just the performance and everything.
Yeah, I agree that there is that little bit of barrier, because I felt it the first time I heard the first song. I enjoyed it immensely. I really liked it. But then when I heard the second or the third song, it felt a little weird to me, partly because I had seen like a musical or two before, and I didn't really like the format, especially the formats where in the musical, like, almost everything is sung, where everything has sort of like a tune to it, and people don't really have normal conversations, and that was the previous musicals that I had seen with such a similar theme were kind of weird. And I thought this one was a little weird in the same way when I heard something like the second song, or like the song that introduces the Schuyler sisters. It felt very grating to listen to. It was just so weird, because I felt like shouldn't you be saying this stuff instead of singing this stuff? But like you said, once I gave it a little bit of time, it has now really become something that I enjoy listening to. Like, as a song, they're really nice, each of them. And now I'm able to see a lot more sort of connections between different songs, between different lines that the characters say, and how they kind of bounce off each other. The significance of one person saying the same thing, whereas another person saying the same thing. It's starting to become more apparent to me as time goes on.
Yeah, and it's because of that suspension of disbelief that you get in the first song itself, or like in the very beginning of your experience, you actually are afforded a lot more flexibility in your presentation of the thing. So you can have jokes, you can have winks, you can have puns, you can have fourth wall breaks without ever disconcerting the audience, because you already have told them that you're telling a story where there is no expectation. Like, for example, if you were to watch Les Miserables on stage, because of the air of authenticity and realism that it creates, you are, even though the people are singing, of course, you would expect them to have like, you almost as if you are watching the revolution happening in front of you, but the French Revolution. But with Hamilton, what happens is that because that air of authenticity is broken from the very beginning, every decision that it takes sort of helps it go forward and do experimental things which work for it. And also it's almost sort of like it's a confluence of a few things that just sort of happen to work incredibly well together. Like the fact that the fact that Hamilton was known for being extremely vocal, extremely like speaking his mind, writing non-stop, and like just being extremely eloquent and doing all of that stuff. And for that kind of a personality, along with the at least, like, again, all of my knowledge for Hamilton comes from the play and the surrounding research that I've done, mostly just
Yeah.
Wikipedia and like other sources. But
Yeah.
like the kind of personality that he had, this thing of wanting to prove himself, that kind of a drive, which sort of comes out in sort of rants, and it comes out in these long speeches and long things that he wrote. And I think rap or just hip hop is like a perfect tool for that sort of that way of expressing yourself.
Yeah. I particularly like the fact, like what you were saying a little bit earlier about the high art, low art combination, where especially like rap is really rebellious. It's come up from a place of like creativity and rebellion, and even like, I mean, that's the kind of theme that you've seen in like with stories of art rap artists. And it's also kind of been represented recently with Gully Boy and stuff like that in India as well, where you have like rap is another way of sort of rebelling, and it's poetry, and it's really really nice. So I find that really really well done with the way rap is used, or in general hip hop is used to talk
Yeah.
about the American Revolution, which was inherently a rebellion against the empire. So it's really nice. At the same time, like you said, with theater, there are enough sort of, I think, components. I absolutely have no idea about classical theater, but I'm going to assume because it was popular as a Broadway show, I think there are enough components that, you know, hardcore theater fans were not alienated, that there was enough there that for it to work as a Broadway play.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really really cool. There are like I just realized on my recent viewing where I think there are 3 songs by King George, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in the first one, when he comes on stage, he's singing about like it's kind of like a breakup song with a super super evil tone to it, where he's like, I'll send a fully armed battalion to remind you of my love. But then when he's at the end of the song, he says everybody, and it sounds like a very musical-y thing to do, where you have everybody singing. But it's also a king demanding everyone to sing, and everyone sings with him. You know, he commands it and it is done. And I think in the second song, which happens after the war is won, that he's singing, and his lines are something of the sort where he says, now you are on your own. And he's saying it to the newly independent American states. And he's saying you're on your own, but by the time he finishes singing, he looks around, he realizes he's singing on his own. I found that really nice. That was particularly humorous. And I mean, that's where I feel like they've really used these sort of visual cues and audio cues like combined together. I'm gonna jump around all over the place because I'm gonna pull examples of across the timeline of the play. But at the end of the song, at the end of the play, I keep saying play, but please hear me say musical every time I say play. I'm sorry about that. But in one of the last songs, Hamilton is talking about death. He has this line which he says a couple of times through the song. I imagine death so much it feels more like a memory. And then in this one, the words go, there is no beat, there is no melody. And when he says it, he draws your attention to the fact that at that moment when he's saying those words out, there's no music playing, there's no beat. When generally throughout the song, there's some beat to give you some sort of tempo, or there's some music in the background, even if it's just like a few chords or something. And he sort of takes you in and out of that play in that moment. And he's still talking about death. He's still talking about something which is like a sort of bubble in time when he's addressing sort of his thoughts to the audience. But it's so well crafted that and it's just enough that it takes you out, that it reminds you, oh, there's no beat, there's no music, there's nothing right now, it's super quiet. And then the action resumes again and you're simply pulled back in, and it's like you never left. It's incredible.
And I have called this a masterpiece a lot of times, and it's genuinely like, as somebody who thinks a lot about story structures and film and forms and formats and just storytelling and all that stuff, and audiovisual mediums especially, I have always this might be a bit of an overstatement, but not by a lot, that I think this is one of the best audiovisual pieces of like materials ever created. Like, it's really high up there with all the sort of milestones and all the legendary films and theater and literature, everything that we have. It's really gonna be like, it's honestly a modern classic, and it's because it's so timely yet so timeless. And something that I have been like, the more recent readings and stuff that I'm doing, I'm realizing more of the point is not the fact that this is the narrative of this person, but it's more about the story being told itself is sort of the art. The art is not just this incredibly well written, composed, performed musical, but it's also the fact that we are participating in that because we get the jokes. Like when King George, another example that you had pointed out, when King George mentions I'll go mad, he is he's telling you, he's directly telling you that he's basically going to be called Mad King George for the rest of his life. And like these kinds of inside jokes, or even when they break the fourth wall, the entire concept is that who lives, who dies, who tells your story. And that sort of starts from the very beginning, from the first line. Like, the first lines of the play are by Aaron Burr, the guy who kills the protagonist, Alexander Hamilton. And again, this is not a spoiler, but like I think you should know by now that this is going to be completely filled with spoilers.
I think what's really kind of cool about this particular one is that the narrator is a character within the story itself. And not just that, he's also the antagonist, or supposedly he is the primary antagonist. And that the way they've kind of built it up is really nice, because then the narrator has a conversation with the audience, but the character has a conversation with other characters, and as a result he's able to switch in and out, and he can sort of relay communication between the two sort of realms of reality, where the audience exists and one where the story is happening. And he flits back and forth between the two, which I think is really cool. And for me, the first song, where he in the beginning of the musical, he confesses that he's the person who kills the protagonist. He's the person who kills the main character of the story. And I feel like that's a really nice hook. That's really nice way of pulling people in, just to get them wondering, like, hey, hold up, what's going on? I mean, this guy's telling me the story, so I feel connected to him because he's talking to me. Everyone else is talking to each other. But then he's also saying that he killed the guy. And I mean, I remember like my English teachers telling us, like, you have to have a good hook when you're writing an essay, for example, right? And I feel like that first song is an amazing hook, just to pull you in, slowly reel you in until you forget that, oh, hey, this is the guy who killed him, the main guy. And I love that bit.
I think you were getting at the same thing, where it gets at the fact that you're going to see how it ended up being this way, because the first time they meet, you know that this guy is going to kill this other guy, but when they meet for the first time in the second song, like they're talking to each other, and they're talking to each other fairly cordially, a little formally but cordially, and they're being good to each other, and you're like, wait, like what is going to end up happening? So you, again, as you said, you have that hook, but also what I think it ends up doing, which I think is the sort of for me is the more satisfying part, is the fact that you, as the narrator, we automatically sympathize with or empathize with that character, but then you know that the story is about this other guy, so you are obviously empathizing with him because it's his story most of the time, but you also so you don't have this clean black and white thing of this guy is the villain, so he has like no place, you have no respect for that guy. Here you can see his internal structure, his mind working, and him sort of finding his morality everywhere, and you see, so you are sort of made to question where you on whose side you are, though there is a clear bias there, but you at least have an inkling of what the other person was thinking of, and you're not completely just relegating him to be like your like your archetypal villain, where he still has a lot of character, and you see a lot of similarities between both of them, and you still see the differences in them, and which is incredibly well executed and is incredibly well written.
I mean, the details are amazing. I am not arguing with you there. They are beautifully placed in, and they're nuggets that pay off across different songs at different points in the story, and it's hard to get it on the first go. It's hard to get it even on the third or the fifth listen. And honestly, there's still stuff that I don't know about, partly because I mean, I guess we haven't come from that background where we just don't know those references. Like, for example, I read recently that in the song that when there's an introduction of the three friends of Hamilton, Lawrence, Mulligan, and Marquis de Lafayette, the introduction of Hercules Mulligan, there is a lot to unpack in like two little lines. And this is like, I found again this on the website with the lyric stuff, but this is like Lin-Manuel Miranda described it, where he broke down the composition, where he also talked about how he's used lyrics from different parts. He's talked about, like, for example, when at one point Hamilton says, I'm only 19 but my mind is older. Apparently that comes from a Mobb Deep song, and that's a reference calling back to a song which, again, you and I, at least as far as I know, we don't have any connection to. We're not like, there's no reference for us. And so I'm sure there are a lot of references that are typically sort of American or related to hip hop that we just don't know about. But still, the stuff that we do come across is so mind-blowing. It's so intricately woven, right? That, I mean, I don't know. I'm losing words. Where, like, in the song My Shot, they're talking about, I'm not gonna throw away my shot, where they're talking sort of about seizing the chance that they have.
Metaphorical shot.
Well, also literal shots, because they're drinking shots as they sing. And I love that bit.
And also it foreshadows the gunshots which are going to happen later on.
Yes, very true. So it's all kind of like, I don't know, I find myself overwhelmed because of the layers that need to be sort of talked about, and handling all of those at the same time just overloads my brain. So
it's is, I think it's extremely dense. Like, it's not just that it's a lot of words, but all of this stuff is extremely dense, and it's rooted in a lot of history, because, like, again, this is based on a biography of Alexander Hamilton by Ron Chernow. So it's historical things that it's referencing current things, it's referencing music, and like, I have no idea about the sort of musical stuff, but I have again seen some videos, read some stuff about particular motifs being repeated at particular times, and how that has like a musical meaning to things, and it's just crazy. But just to defend my madness and to defend my habit of reading scripts, there is one thing that I had noticed, just one thing, at least for now. The one thing that I had not noticed before, because I had heard the music a lot of times, but you can't really discern a lot of different voices. But in the script, it says the characters' names. So there's a line in the first song itself. There's a couple of lines, which also brings me to a point which I wanted to discuss, which is the fact that they have dual casting, where they have some actors who play multiple roles, and they are usually like in the first half, in the first act and the second act, they're broken that way, so it's easier to follow. But also, like, in the first song itself, there's a few lines. There's one line that goes, "We fought with him," and that line is said by the actor who plays Hercules Mulligan and James Madison, and the actor who plays Lafayette and Jefferson. And in these cases, you at least, even when you see it on stage, you have just one voice, one face, one person there, but he's a stand-in for two, and this is verified because this is there in like a bunch of his interviews and stuff like that, where he mentioned that the reason that they were cast that way is for, like, and it's in the script, like it's there, it was written that way.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So
I noticed it on the second go, where you hear them say, "I fought with him," and on one side you can hear them say it as a person who fought with him during the war. They were on his side. And the second half is where they fought with him was that they argued against him. And those are the characters from the second half. And I think for those bits where the characters sort of talk about their relationships with Hamilton, like me, I fought with him. Those are the characters. Then me, I died for him.
Yeah, which that's is John Lawrence and his son.
And his son, Philip, who both die. And then you have me, I loved him. And that is said by the three characters who... Well, it is said by the three people who represent characters who at one point or another are in love with Hamilton.
Yeah. Especially because when I saw it for the first time, and I hadn't read the script the first time, like I didn't keep it with me like a madman. When I was watching it for the first time, I was just watching it. I didn't have like the script next to me.
Yeah, of course.
But the second time I watched it, I did have it next to me, which is when I realized the fact that when the three women sing the line, "Me, I loved him," it's the three actors, but they are like, Angelica loves him a different way, Eliza loves him a different way, and Peggy loves him a different way. She's like confides in him, and which is the line in the play later. But also the same actor plays Mariah Reynolds in the second part, which is again the more interesting part, where she says, "Me, I loved him." And there is also the other, again, we're going to keep this child friendly, so we're not going to get into anything, but even the connotation of her saying loved him is possibly very contrived. So, again, like, and because it does that wink wink, nudge nudge kind of humor throughout, it's incredibly well layered. Like, I don't know. Because he keeps doing that every time anyone is mentioning anything. Like, there are always at least two layers playing. Like, whenever anyone's having any conversation, there's at least two layers playing. So, yeah.
I love the part when when they have a cabinet meeting, which is in the format of a rap battle. I love the fact that, and this is addressed in like a lot of points during the musical, but George Washington says, "You could have been, ladies and gentlemen, you could have been anywhere tonight, but you're here with us in New York City. And if you were watching this musical live as it's meant to be seen, you would be in New York City to hear George Washington say it." And it's really nice because it reminds you could have been anywhere tonight, but you're here in this room, in this audience, watching this musical live. And I just love these little nods to the fact that not only a lot of things historically happened in New York, that this musical is being performed in New York.
Yeah, that allows for a lot more, resonance with lines in the other songs, like how lucky we are to be alive right now, and in the greatest city in the world, and things like that, which would be like, I'm sure it would mean a lot more when you're actually sitting in New York watching it live.
Yeah.
And, again, multiple layers happening. Man, oh man, there's a lot to unpack, and like we have barely scratched the surface. Like, what I will say is that just drop whatever your plans are for the day. Just take 2.5 hours of your life out. Like, ask a friend for their Disney password, or like get a free trial or whatever, get a subscription, but watch Hamilton, because it's incredible. And the fact that we can actually watch it, not just listen to it, and again, we can actually watch the thing happen, which gives it a lot more meaning. Like, even the line that you mentioned with King George, there's a point where he says, I'll be mad, I'll be blue, and I'm blue, and he taps his foot and the light turns blue, and which is so incredible for you to see that visual. It's it's extremely funny.
And I mean, there are lots of parts like that, and I think one of the cool things of watching this shot on camera with the close-up scenes that you mentioned was that I did not realize that, at least I don't know if this happens during the performance, but in this one, during the close-up of King George singing, at least in the first song, at one point he spits, like you can see spit flying, like he's really angry, and he's almost sort of frothing at the mouth, and you can see that little twinge of madness combined with rage. And I don't know if this happened during live performances or if this was like a modification they did just for this for the close-up shots, but I thought it was amazing because it really sells the emotion. And also I did not realize how theater could be just so intense, like people spit and stuff. Like, wow, okay, that for me that starts crossing like some lines, but it was really cool.
The acting is incredible, but I did read that the actor who plays King George does have a thing where when he's live on stage, he sweats a lot and he does spit a lot. But I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, because of the entire way that theater is, you have to project your voice, and because again this is intense stuff that is being said, and along with the acting and all of that, I'm sure that it helps. Like, I'm sure it does result in a lot of fluids. But I just want to get to a couple of things. One is, I just want to complete my thought, which was just get the subscription and just watch Hamilton because it's incredible. And if you do want to dive into a rabbit hole and spend a week of your life researching this thing, go to genius.com. Again, not sponsored at all, but like, email us if you want to sponsor us. Anyway, the point is, go to genius.com. We'll put a link in the show notes, but you can go there and you can go through, you can literally click on every line of the lyrics for every song, and you can find like a bunch of stuff written, and the lyrics and a bunch of the stuff is verified by Lin-Manuel Miranda, the guy who wrote the play. And Yeah, there's also some behind the scenes stuff by Adam Savage from Mythbusters. He got to go to the San Francisco tour behind the scenes, and he got to actually play around with some of the props and see how the stuff works. And that was really incredible because I had not realized the number of mics that they use, and they use a lot of them because all of the even the ensemble cast, like, they all have to be mic'd up because they also have a lot of lines that they say. And it's incredible, like the entire mixing process, the mics, and like just the way the mics are all hooked up. Like if you see close up in some of the close up shots, you'll see that the mics are placed inside in their hair for most of the characters. For King George, it's in his crown. For Aaron Burr, he just has, because he has short hair, they just have him like a thing connected to his ear. But yeah, the Adam Savage videos are also quite cool because you get to see the actual plays, the actual props, and the actual, the behind the scenes stuff that happens.
One of my favorite pieces of prop about, especially like now that I know that they've used it, is the rotating floor. And I love the way that they've used it. It also connects back to, like, in many songs they have the sound of discs scratching, like like a turntable.
Yeah.
And it's a really nice reminder to that, but it's also a really cool way of showing progress in time, as well as rewinding, which is one of the songs. And I really, really like that song, but
Oh, dude.
beyond the musical and lyrics of it, when I watched it happen, the choreography, the position of different characters along the song, and I'm sure, like, I haven't watched it enough to know whether it's accurate, but I'm sure that they mapped it out in such a way that when the song goes rewind, they are at the, like, positions that they were previously in time in the previous song, basically.
Yeah.
And the way they connect those kind of dots, which are, like, basically they tell one story from the perspective of Elizabeth Schuyler first, the first time that she met Alexander Hamilton, and their introduction. And then they tell that same story from the perspective of Angelica Schuyler, who is the one who introduces the two of them. And to get to that point, to get to the same starting point, again, tell the same story from a different perspective, they say rewind. And they rewind the whole rotating floor, and people move. It was so amazing to see that concept where, yeah, if you didn't have the floor, you could just have people moving to different points, in physical space on the stage. But to have the whole thing rotating in a different direction, that was something that got to me very much. And then they've used it really nicely in other parts as well, where you have people, say, for example, walking on the street, and you can have different parts of the table moving at different speeds, and you can pass lamps in a way that you might on a street. You can have different conversations, as well as people moving away and moving towards the characters without, basically, they stand still on the disc on the floor. But because the floor is moving, you can have them come closer and further apart, and that, again, you have significance added to that. Oh,
Yeah.
that was incredible. I have no idea whether this is, like, something that was sort of invented for this musical, or whether this has been used before, like something similar has been done before, but it was absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, I think its use in Rewind is just absolutely just perfect for the way it is, and also for a lot of the things where they just slow down. Like there are a couple of moments where there are just bullet time effect, like the one in Matrix, where a bullet just slows down to a halt, and you see all of this stuff. Mihir, stop eating it. It's really annoying when I'm editing. But yeah, when there's slow motion, it's really really fun to see all of that stuff happening, and I'm sure it just adds the whole dynamic process when you're actually in stage, and it makes it far more sort of active and dynamic than it would be just to have like a flat stage. And since you have mentioned Rewind, I would like to say that Renee Goldberry, I think is her name, is just absolutely incredible. I have heard that song a million times and I have been brought to tears every time. Like there's one note that she goes on, there's this one line, and like when she's singing, like at least now when you can see it, like all her nerves and veins in her neck are just like she's singing at the top of her voice, and it's incredible. The kind of performances that these guys have given are, I mean, immense, of the best caliber. I remember telling you just before, like even before I'd seen it, even just when I was listening to it and recommending every living soul had to listen to Hamilton, I saw like you could hear the performances, and you can like they're absolutely incredible. Like all of the main cast is absolutely brilliant. Like I feel like Aaron Burr, the guy who plays Aaron Burr, Leslie Odom Jr., is brilliant. Especially some of his songs, which are like, I have a list of my favorite songs, and I think some of his songs are really 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 impactful, like probably even more than for Hamilton. Like there's Wait for It, which is just immense, and also his songs, that the one song that he writes to his daughter, and then Hamilton joins in later and speaks to his son, and it's incredibly beautiful. Renee Goldberry is also brilliant, especially that line in Helpless. Yeah, in that song there's this line that in Satisfied, sorry, there's this line that goes, doesn't mean I want him any less, and just her voice and her expression in that thing is just, I mean, acting gold. And I think she did win a Tony. Like Hamilton has got 11 Tonys, I mean, which is incredible, and it also got the Pulitzer Prize for Drama, like the book version of it. And yeah, and it's the first album to ever receive a 5-star review on Billboard.com. I mean, it's just incredible. All of the performances, and also like what I really liked is that in the visual, now that you can see it, Daveed Diggs, the guy who plays Lafayette and what's his name, Jefferson, he is really cool. Like I really want to be friends with that guy. He's just so relaxed and chill, and he's just like a fun guy to watch. I love this thing so much, man. So there's another thing that I wanted to mention, and I think I've told you this before, but I have mentioned this, that I have wanted, like for as long as I have been obsessed with this play, with this musical, I have wanted to do like if and when the possibility was that I would be a film director and I would be able to like make a film version of this. And I was like, when I first saw the first trailer, or like the first teaser, like a few weeks ago, when they said, oh, the Hamill film is coming, and I was like, oh my god, they've made a film already. I didn't know about it, and it ended up being just a recording of the play on stage.
Right.
But the more I've been thinking about it for I think it's been a week or so now, and I've been thinking about it, and I do think that it's made for this medium, and like it's not happening, at least for a good couple of decades, that they will make this into a film, but into like a proper film. But being that it's Disney, I'm sure they will remake everything, a live action version of everything.
Yeah.
But at- so at some point they will, and if they do, I would love to be in the room where it happens, because I really feel that like for whatever reason, I don't know what and why and how, but this story has just resonated with me a lot, and I have been like very clearly obsessed with it. So I have a lot of ideas of how I would want to script it, and there was a point, the whole reason why I got the lyrics and the script was so that I could start writing my own script version of it, like for a film script. But
Yeah.
for now, after watching this, it's on hold for at least a good while, because I think and I might still think about it in that terms, but I have put it on the side because they have actually done a really good job. I think Thomas Kail, who's the director, has done a really good job with making the transition from a theater to something that you watch on a screen, and that's really nice.
Yeah.
Because it could very easily be like a static camera, it would get boring, but they didn't do that, and they haven't gone overboard with just having close-ups of everything. They still have the big movements, so you can still see the big
Yeah.
stuff happening, but you can also see like when it's important, you can see the close-ups. And again, one of my favorite songs, but in Satisfied, when they do the whole rewind thing and when they're doing all of that, they actually use a lot of film techniques, which is they have a lot of camera angles, so they actually do a lot of cutting around from one angle to the other, like just incredibly quickly, which is the way you would do it in a film. And they're very careful and very clean throughout, where they have very few cutting around, but in this scene they just completely go judicious with the cuts, and that really heightens the emotion. And I really felt that the second time, because I mean, they've actually done a really good job of communicating the feeling to the audience, which I think is like a very difficult thing to do, but they've managed it somehow.
I mean, I think I would love to go see a uh, live presentation of this musical. When and if and maybe if I one day get a chance to do that. But otherwise, I think that this video recording is, I think it's the best alternative, considering all things right now, especially the
Yeah.
fact that we're not even leaving our houses, more or less, for various reasons. And I'm really happy to see like so many different people are enjoying it. I've seen like on Twitter like little kids singing it, and then there's also people like us who enjoy it. And
Yeah.
I'm just happy because I think there's a lot of messages within the lyrics that are just, I don't know, I guess they're good messages, some things that I believe in. But also in terms of like poetry, this is so good. This is like the words, the lyrics, the way they've played around with it. And it's not a stiff, it's not an old school type of poetry where you have to make things rhyme and you have to sort of work on every word. But yet the extent to which the rhyme schemes are maintained, or the way they're kind of fluidly blended into one another, is kind of amazing. I mean, it's very subtle in many parts, and sometimes different characters complete each other's rhyme schemes. I mean, that's quite often throughout the lyrics. But the way that it's executed is beautiful, and I'm just happy that a lot of people are enjoying so many, like, I mean, each song has almost comes from like a different genre of music as well. And there's like a little bit for everyone who enjoys some genres
Yeah.
and maybe who doesn't enjoy another. And it's overall, it's got a nice light tone, which is funny enough for you to sort of enjoy it without it feeling, dull history class lessons.
Yeah. And I would actually really recommend, I would really recommend you go and I'll send you the link. It'll be in the show notes to go and read the comments, because like I don't
comments
know
on
how the comments on the video, the old video that Lin-Manuel Miranda had posted the first time that he performed it in
Okay,
the
the
White
one
House.
where he performed, yeah.
Yeah, when he performed alone, and you see the comments, and for something that has ended up becoming this huge cultural phenomenon in the last couple of years at least, like the comments are really old. Like I don't think a lot of people have watched it since, or like new people have watched it since, so all the comments are fairly old, and you see these comments from 10 years ago and people are talking about it in sort of that line of like, oh, I always thought history was very boring, but I saw this in school or
Yeah.
whatever, and people are like, oh wait, when is this album coming out? And like it was just like, you see something happen, you see the roots of something before it really blows up, and you can still go back to that video and actually see how people were responding to it back then, and it's just nice. It feels like a little snippet of a time which was very different.
Yeah, I think this really is an interesting take, and I hope that more history and more, not just history, but just boring things are converted into something that is more palatable and more sort of contemporary, where you can look back, or you can look at different topics and concepts through a lens that is very, on one hand, very unrelated, on another it is almost intertwined. So I hope that this play gets a lot more audience, and that people sort of like the ideas presented through it. And I also hope that like we have stuff like this happening in like Marathi theater,
Yeah.
or in like Indian cinema, because if we can do stuff like that, I mean, yes, there are good parts of classical music and classical theater that exist. Unfortunately, again, I am not enough into any of it to know those, but I also feel like that is partly what deters me from going to a Marathi play, because I don't really know any of that. I don't know the historical context when it was written. I don't know the music styles that they're using and how they're important or how they're hard to sing. And at the same time, there's like enough things happening right now that could be blended together to create an experience that draws me in with one thing and teaches me another. I always like those experiences. I find they're more rewarding than a simple educational experience.
Yeah, I really hope that stuff like this happens just everywhere and we get to see it. And yeah, especially because I think India has a very an old tradition of theater, and it's actually extremely unique. Like the Indian storytelling format is extremely unique, especially in theater, and it's something that what has happened is, for whatever historical reasons that we won't get into, a lot of Indian theater even today is sort of based, like the structure, the foundation is sort of very classical Western European kind of a structure, and there's very little actually that is done in the Indian format. And if again we're doing any more recommendations, there's a movie called Utsav, which does an Indian format, but again it's not a play, it's a movie. But I would love to see stuff like that happen in theater in India. And I think in general I feel like we should have a lot more art forms, and everyone should get good exposure, and yeah, just good things. But I'm really glad that this film was made, and people like us can have a new level of appreciation for this thing. and other people, for the uninitiated, I think this is a more accessible way to see Hamilton rather than just listening to it. And yeah, I'm happy. I hope that whoever's listening either has seen and watched it or and heard it, and if not, I hope that we've inspired them to go and give it a shot.